Today, let's explore the remarkable story of how Korea, once a unified entity, became two distinct countries following the Second World War. It all began at the close of the 19th century, when the Korean peninsula found itself in the middle of a power struggle between Russia and Japan, both seeking to colonize the region. Despite Korea's attempts to seek support from other nations, such as England and the United States, the tide turned with Japan's victory in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. This led to the Korean peninsula falling under Japan's control, making it a colony of the Japanese Empire by 1910. During the colonial period, various groups with different beliefs and backgrounds fought against Japanese rule, uniting in their common cause. However, following Japan's defeat in World War II, the Allies, in line with the decision made at the Cairo Conference, liberated Korea. It was believed that Korea needed time to adapt to democracy, so the country was divided into northern and southern parts, under the control of the Soviet Union and the United States, respectively. The plan was to eventually reunite the two parts, yet this decision was made without consulting the Korean people. The United States established a democratic government in the southern part, while the Soviet Union set up a communist regime in the north. Efforts were made by the United States to rebuild the economy and provide aid, while media suppression and dictatorship were propagated in the north. In 1947, the United States brought the issue of Korea before the United Nations to find a pathway for reunification. However, the Soviet Union opposed any UN involvement, setting the stage for the separation and divergence of the two Koreas. In a turning point during November 1947, the United Nations made a resolution calling for free elections, the departure of foreign forces, and the establishment of a commission for Korea. However, the Soviet Union boycotted the elections and did not recognize the resolution. A conference in Pyongyang in April 1948 brought together organizations from both North and South Korea. Amid this, South Korea held nationwide elections in May, with Syngman Rhee being elected despite a boycott by left-wing parties. On August 15th, the Republic of Korea took over from the United States military, while the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was declared on September 9th, with Kim Il-sung as the prime minister in the north. Both new countries claimed authority over the entire peninsula and rapidly armed their newly formed forces as the Soviet Union and the United States withdrew their troops from both Koreas. The balance shifted in favor of the communist rulers in North Korea from 1949 onward. As the Soviet Union conducted its first atomic bomb test in September, the American forces, who had been in Korea since World War II, withdrew completely. Additionally, in the same year, Chinese communists, led by Mao, triumphed in the Chinese Civil War, establishing the People's Republic of China, which became an ally for North Korea. These events, along with the American decision not to intervene in the Chinese Civil War, led Soviet and North Korean leaders to believe that the Americans would not interfere in the war in Korea, as Korea held less strategic importance than China. This belief prompted Stalin and the Soviet leadership to adopt a more aggressive policy in East Asia, providing substantial military and economic assistance to China and North Korea. With the end of the Chinese Civil War, divisions of the People's Liberation Army were allowed to proceed to North Korea. The presence of experienced Chinese veterans alongside Soviet tanks, artillery, and fighter planes, combined with the rigorous military training of North Korean soldiers, contributed to North Korea's military superiority over South Korea. In a stunning turn of events on June 3, 1950, North Korea startled the world with a surprising attack, sending a 90,000-strong army towards the southern part of the peninsula, overpowering the 14,000-strong South Korean forces with ease. At that time, President Truman of the United States suspected that North Korea's actions were influenced by Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union. However, recent evidence has revealed that Kim Il-sung, the leader of North Korea, independently made the decision to attack and sought Stalin's permission in late 1949, with Stalin finally granting permission in April 1950. The Soviet Union provided military assistance to North Korea and supported the Northern Army's plan, including the reconstruction of the railway route to Kaesong. The people of South Korea, not inclined toward communism, sought help from the United States, Truman urgently requested military action against the aggressor from the United Nations and mandated the involvement of the military forces of the United States of America in this war. In the absence of the Soviet Union, the Security Council issued a resolution condemning the attack and expressing support for South Korea. A coalition force consisting of 16 countries volunteered to join the United Nations coalition, deploying their military forces to Korea. Despite initial setbacks for the South Korean Army, with the entry of the coalition forces and the strategic planning of General MacArthur, they swiftly pushed back the North Korean Army beyond the 38th parallel. Buoyed by their success, the coalition forces, under the pressure of General MacArthur, decided to advance into the northern part of the peninsula. Although Communist China had warned that it would intervene if the United States encroached further, the entry of Chinese forces and Soviet air support forced the coalition forces to retreat, resulting in Seoul falling under the control of the North Korean Army once again. In April 1951, the coalition forces once again successfully pushed the North Korean Army back behind the 38th parallel. However, an important issue emerged at this stage: the disagreement between President Truman of the United States and General MacArthur, the commander of the American forces in the East. While Truman began to consider peace negotiations, MacArthur publicly mentioned potential atomic attacks on the Korean and Chinese border, creating mistrust in China and the Soviet Union regarding America's intentions. Eventually, Truman issued orders for MacArthur's dismissal and return to the United States, resolving the disagreement. After the Communist forces reached the border of the two Koreas in 1951, the defensive lines of both sides remained relatively unchanged for about a year, with consistent exchanges of gunfire and bombardment. The Allied Air Force conducted airstrikes on North Korea, and peace negotiations began on July 10, 1951. However, these negotiations faced numerous challenges and did not yield significant results until the end of the war in 1953. General Matthew B. Ridgway assumed command of the American forces in Korea after MacArthur. Both sides engaged in a standoff, exchanging fire from their fortified positions, while peace negotiations encountered obstacles, causing pauses of 1 or 2 weeks before resuming as the Korean people suffered the consequences of the war. The issue of prisoners of war posed a significant challenge on the road to peace. This matter concerned Chinese and North Korean forces held captive by the Allies, or South Korean forces held captive by the Communists. The United Nations insisted that the prisoners should have the freedom to choose whether to return to their home countries or go elsewhere in the world, not aligning with the desires of the Communists. However, 2 critical events expedited the peace negotiations: the passing of Joseph Stalin, diverting the West's attention from the Korean War, and General Eisenhower's rise to power in the United States, hastening the peace talks. These events marked a turning point in the peace negotiations, leading to the eventual end of the Korean War and paving the way for a new era in the region. Khrushchev, the new leader of the Soviet Union, sought to establish new relations with the West and recognized that Korea was the main obstacle to achieving this goal. Eisenhower, who had assumed the presidency with a promise to end the Korean War, shared a strong desire and enthusiasm to bring the war to a close. After several rounds of negotiations, an armistice agreement was signed by both sides on July 27, 1953, marking the end of 3 years and 1 month of conflict. However, a new issue emerged. Prisoners had the right to choose their homeland, posing a challenge for the Communists. Out of the 75,123 Communist prisoners, only 21,809 chose to stay in South Korea, with over 14,000 of these being Chinese. This indicated that many Communists were dissatisfied with the regimes ruling their countries, disappointing the Communists. Despite the passage of time, there was no change in the borderline, and the divide between the two Koreas grew to an extreme extent, leading to the absence of diplomatic relations between them for many years. North Korea pursued a communist ideology and established an economic system with absolute state control, but currently faces a dire economic situation. In contrast, South Korea embraced a capitalist system and has emerged as a prominent industrialized nation. Renowned companies such as Samsung, LG, Daewoo, Hyundai, and others have produced goods that are sought after worldwide. However, the people of North Korea live in a closed and dictatorial country, isolated from the rest of the world. Despite negotiations between the two Koreas since 2000, their relationship remains strained, with occasional news of military clashes casting a shadow over potential progress. The living standards and prosperity of the two Koreas seem worlds apart, and as long as there are two distinct governments with differing perspectives, the path to unity remains uncertain. The hope for a united Korea persists, but the journey to that unity is still unclear. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe our channel and comment your opinion about this video. Until next time.